Buddy. Welcome to another episode of Don't Whistle at Night podcast. And today we have Thomas Sewid joining us. And Thomas, go ahead and tell us about yourself, where you come from, your nation, and everything about you.
Gilakasla, greetings, Danse, in my other language, Cree. I'm a Kwakwaka'wakw First Nation, grew up in northern Vancouver Island, British Columbia, Canada, and my mother is a full-blooded Cree First Nation from central Canada and Saskatchewan from the Mistawasses Cree Nation. So I'm of mixed bloods, plains and coastal, but being raised in the coastal culture, was born on a small island called Alert Bay off northeastern Vancouver Island, which is a community of Numgis First Nations, of the Kwakwaka'wakw Nation, and other tribes. And right from a young boy, we heard about Chonachwa, Sasquatch, the wild woman of the woods, and we were told that we had to behave because Chonachwa is always watching you from the bushes. And if she sees you kids misbehave, fight, steal, lazy, don't do your chores, don't do your homework, don't eat your food, she's going to come at night with big hairy arm and reach in the window where you're sleeping and grab you, rubbing spruce sap from a tree on your eyes so you can't open them. And then she's going to throw you in the basket on her back or stuff you in a sack woven of cedar bark fiber, and she's going to carry you deep into the forest, up a mountain to her invisible home. That's why we can't find Sasquatch, Tunacha, and that's where she boils you up and eats the misbehaving children. So you'll behave yourself, Tommy. That's what I was brought up with, and I'm sure you'll edit in pictures that I'll share with you. I'm a Kwakwaka'wakw First Nations artist, so I do quite a few creations. Like behind me, you'll see some of the ones on my wall here in my house, and they're Tonach, Sasquatches, male and female. I do them with all types of seasons, carrying salmon, basket on their back. But I'll share them with you so you can edit them in so the viewers can see some of those things. But of all the North American Indian tribes I've interacted with, and I've traveled from the Arctic in Canada, Northwest Territories, living there for over a year, working northern British Columbia's coast. I lived in a place called Haida Gwaii, Queen Charlotte Islands, a place of the Haida First Nation, and I heard about their Gogih, their Sasquatch. I even encountered one when I was cutting firewood up there one day. I never saw it, but I heard it. And my dog, which was a bush dog trained for hunting black bear and grizzly bear, he sat there with his tail between his legs, looking in the bush and looking at me like, "Get me out of here, boss." And I just opened, threw my chainsaw in the back of the truck. Land claims. His name was Land Claims Treaties Now. Everywhere my dog lifted his leg to pee, we Indians were claiming it back. That's why I named him Land Claims. But anyway, he jumped in the truck. I started it up, and we DD'd out of there, and because I could smell it. And then a couple hours later, I got my buddy, and we went in there to check things out, and we found footprints, knee prints where it was kneeling down, and we could see the stick that it pounded on a tree with, and the marks on the bark of that hemlock tree where it was pounding when I heard tree knocking. So that was, one of many of my encounters, and a lot of people, because I live here in Forks, Washington, on the Olympic Peninsula, but I am Canadian. And since April of last year, I've been managing the world's largest Sasquatch museum and store called SasquatchTheLegend.com. I painted murals on the outside wall 4 years ago of Tunacha Sasquatch and a face that's like that with hands, whoop, whoop, and the company logo, SasquatchLegend.com. And when you walk in, you'll see everything from coffee mugs, tumblers, which are thermos tumblers, t-shirts, bath mats, shower curtains, ornaments, fridge magnets, all with my Jonah designs on there. I think we have 12 different designs so far. But I live a unique life managing this Sasquatch store because one of the first things people encounter when they walk in is we have a big screen TV that my wife has edited videos of me sharing the Kwakwaka'wakw and other North American Indians' perspectives and understanding of Sasquatch. And the non-Indians, when they come in, they're just enthralled. Some of them, most of them look at me, and I always say, "Nis na lumama." Oh, those crazy white people don't understand. And what it is they'll look at me and look down from the TV, look at the big 8.5 foot mannequin of a Sasquatch we have in the store, and you mean there's more than one? And I'm like, give your head a shake. Of course, there's more than one. There's probably well over 250,000 throughout Turtle Island, which we Indians call North America, but I call it Sasquatch Island because, like my banner says on me, I operate Sasquatch Island on social media website, sasquatchisland.com, Facebook, Sasquatch Island, YouTube channel, even TikTok. And, I'm getting the word out because in communicating with my fellow North American Indians, we all share the common understanding. Always respect your local Sasquatch. Never, ever think of harming them or trying to kill them or hunt them. And that's the message that we North American Indians need to emphasize and get out more to the Nishnanut Lumamacha, the white people, that shows of them in camo with beer guts, chasing with shotguns and rifles, Sasquatches, has to stop because we know our history and we never want to be destined to repeat our failures. The Gatling gun was invented by the United States Army for eradicating Indians across the United States so they could put their cattle farms, their cities, their railway lines, and they didn't eradicate us all, so they shoved us into Indian reserves. And it's taken us generations, and some of us are still fighting for equality and for our land claims and our rights and title. So to me, I want to educate people, don't make that same mistake. How many hundreds of thousands of indigenous people in 3 Americas were eradicated all because of supposed progress? And now people want to go out and shoot Sasquatch. Why would you want to do that? It's a sacred being to many tribes. It lives in harmony with nature. It's in balance. They don't have fire because they know fire is bad. Look at us. Our ancestors chose to use fire, and now we have Putin and Trump and others with fingers above nuclear buttons to eradicate the entire planet because some ancestor clicked rocks and got a spark and made a fire. And then, of course, we chipped rocks and we made tools and weapons. And then we started to have mass warfare with each other. And now look what the making of tools and weapons has brought us. We have a war raging in how many countries on this planet right now? Like George Orwell says in his writings of 1984, we're always at war. We just don't know with who. And that's something that we need to look and understand with Sasquatch. We know there's North American Indian pictographs, paintings on rocks that show our ancestors with bows and arrows and spears fighting with large bipedal Sasquatches with hairy bodies and no weapons. And yet we have all of these audio recordings of mass encounters of Sasquatches where they're roaring and vocalizing. And people ask me, because I have a great understanding of Sasquatch, what is it, Tom? And I said, it's no different than when us Indians in Canada go to our metamorphical form of battle, the basketball court, the soccer field, and one of your team gets a good block or a good check or scores. Our team roars and celebrates. Or when we commercial fishermen back in the day, because I commercial fished for 45 years throughout British Columbia, when we'd show up in a port up in northern British Columbia, coming from the southern towns and cities, and you're in the bar and you walk in the door, and all of a sudden someone at the pool table screams at you, "Hey, Tommy, how the hell you doing? Come here. Haven't seen you in what, 6 months since we were herring fishing. How you doing? Buy you a beer." That's what those Sasquatches are doing. Every species on this planet cannot interbreed. And we know what happens with interbreeding. And so they have to have, as us Indians have powwow and potlatch and tournaments. Well, we spread our seed. Someone's going to be bumping uglies in a vehicle or in a hotel room or someone's house, and tribe to tribe, we spread our seed. We've done that for thousands of years with our powwows and our potlatches. So Sasquatch is referred to as by many tribes as the other tribe. And even some native tribes, when you translate their name for Sasquatch, it'll be in English cannibals from the woods, cannibals from the mountains, the cannibal giants, and so forth. So if our ancestors, the North American Indian tribes, were referring to Sasquatch as a cannibal because they would eat the humans, well, it tells you right there what a Sasquatch is. It's a human because only a species eating its own species can be termed a cannibal. Coyotes or wolves or bears or cougar that eat a human are human killers. They're not cannibals. So we have to look at the understanding of the indigenous peoples. We know what Sasquatch is. Members of the other tribe, cannibals, so they're the same species. And when I get the Nistanutlu in our store, I go, but isn't it an ape? Isn't it supernatural? I'm like, supernatural things don't leave tracks, are seen harvesting food, eating,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
and so
Pooping.
it's a critter. They leave
Yeah,
tracks, they leave poop and pee. So they're
yep,
just but some tribes believe in the supernatural aspects. My tribe does a
yeah,
little bit, but it was way back in the day of no of our beginnings. And we just have an understanding that the Sasquatch is sharing our traditional territories with us, which is their traditional territories, but we must always respect them. So that when we have trees shaken, a rock thrown at you, a dead tree pushed down, tree knocking, or chest pounding, or bluff charge, or that roar, it's simply Sasquatch Chunacha telling you, stop, human, or hairless bipedal, I refer to us humans. Turn around, go back where you came from. We're here right now. No different than when we were children, taught how to go out and live in the woods and harvest and hunt and clam dig, fish. They would bring us to beaches and show us. When you get to the beach in the daytime, it's high tide. We're going to clam dig at night tide when the tide's low. But first, we must truth the beach and look. If we see any big tracks or we hear any noises or trees shaking, things thrown at us, or you see a pile of broken shellfish piled up or spread out in like a random pile, that's Sasquatch telling you we're harvesting here at night times, low tide. So you simply walk down the beach, get in your dinghy, go back to your boat, pull the anchor, tow your dinghy, and travel to another beach a mile either side of that one. Truth it again, if there's no activity of a Sasquatch, there's no broken shells, then that's where you will dig that night so that you and Sasquatch aren't disrespecting one another. And then once again, Nisnanulumamacha, well, I'm a logger, I'm a forester, I'm a ranger, I'm a prospector, I'm a trapper, I'm a hiker, I'm a mushroom picker. I've been in the bush for years. I've never seen a Sasquatch or heard him. That's all bunk and BS. I look at him. I said, "You ever notice sometimes you're in the bush and you hear something, you turn around and there's a branch bouncing, but no bear cub, no cougar cub, no raccoon, no bird. Yeah, why? Well, it's Sasquatch pulling the branch down and looking at you because we refer to them in many tribes as the watcher. And they look at you and they notice you're a bush dancer. You're comfortable in the bush environment or wherever it is. And you're not like a city person here in the Olympic Peninsula coming from the cities to hike our trails, slipping and falling, ambulances going by my store like that when it's busy because all the hikers that are breaking ankles and hips and so forth. Because we bush dancers that have live and work in the bush, we're like Sasquatch. We're comfortable. We flow like the breeze through the trees and the branches. Well, when the Sasquatch sees that, he might see your knife, might see you wearing camel, might see you with a gun. Then he pulls the branch down and he lets it go and he turns and he walks away. And the bouncing branch tells you, I saw you. I'm here too. I've gone about my business, giving you respect and space. I expect the same. And I've seen those skeptic non-Indians go, my God, Tom. Every time I go with my brothers up to the cabin to hunt elk every year, that's happened, pretty much every other year or so. And I'm like, yeah, it's just the Sasquatch letting you know he's sharing the bush with you. Leave him alone and he'll leave you alone. All about respect. And that's the message I convey to everyone about Sasquatch is always respect them.
Wow,
Yeah.
wow, that's a beautiful introduction right there. I have to admit, there's you just dropped a lot of knowledge out here on the podcast. Even I'm right now is just smiling, just hearing your the belief of your tribe on Bigfoot when it comes down to it. It's I'm just awestruck right now just hearing you talk like this, hearing someone talk like this. Uh, as
Yeah.
Well, it
for
comes from my life. Like I was a commercial
yes,
fisherman
yes,
all my life, traveling to places all through coastal British Columbia, native Indian communities that you can only access by boat or float plane.
mm,
And as soon as I got there, they come down the dock because we are coming up from the south or wherever, and they bang on the hull of the boat with a fast come out of the galley because it was usually raining. Yeah, Kelakasla, greetings. How can I help you? Hey, you got any Coca-Cola? Our store's out. Ah, yeah, we got a couple flats. We'll buy some off you. And I'll just walk over and give them 2 6 packs. Oh, no, I have it. Anyone in the
yeah,
community making fresh bread? Oh, my auntie is. I'll bring down a loaf. Oh, thanks a lot. Blanket trading.
Oh
And
yeah.
so
Barter.
going to those communities, I was able to, as a young man and boy, learn things, beliefs, perspectives, understanding of Sasquatch that intrigued me. And then when I went into the bush in the early 90s, I spent a lot of time in bush hunting and fishing, clam digging, exploring.
mm,
But then I had came home one time and I got in trouble with the police. They were basically gave me a warning. You stick around this town, you're going to Crowbar Hotel, prison or jail, and we're
Oh,
after you. And then I came home that night, and there was my girlfriend who I was living with in my house, in the house that I shared with my best friend, and they were bumping uglies in the back seat of his car and threw her out. The next morning, I woke up and I'm thinking, pros and cons. This living in town is, I'm a round peg in a square hole. It's just not fitting. I think I better leave. So I sold everything, put stuff in storage. And I remember going to my cousin's house up in northeastern or east central east side of Vancouver Island, British Columbia. And when I walked in his house, he was sitting there on a stool in front of his TV. Desert Storm had just erupted. And we all remember the missiles exploding in Baghdad and elsewhere. And,
mm,
it was about, I guess, maybe late afternoon. So I talked to him and I said, can we load my 10-foot tin boat and outboard motor and all my bush gear in your fast commercial fish gillnet boat, 32 feet long? Can we load it tomorrow and you'd bring me out to our traditional territories and drop me off? He goes, what are you doing? So I'm going to go live in bush. And he goes, sure, pay for the fuel and buy us some box of beer. I said, yeah, okay. So I left and I went visiting friends and family. And when I got back to the house about 10:30 at night, he's still sitting there watching Desert Storm erupt. And I'm thinking, I'm picking a good time to leave the concrete world. Might get a little
Yeah.
bit out of hand here. So anyway, next morning I got up before daylight. I walked out in the living room. He's still sitting there watching Desert Storm.
Wow.
I go, you even sleep,
Yep.
Norman? He's like, no. And so he brought me out and left me out there. And, I would get jobs watching logging camps during the wintertime, during the shutdown by myself. I got hired as a hunting guide. I was doing ecotourism operation during the summers for the sea kayakers and the yachters and sailboaters. And being a hunting guide, I specialized in black bears and grizzly bears and lived on a 97-foot yacht 2 times a year, spring hunt and fall hunt.
Sounds
And
like fun.
as soon as I finish my fall hunt, I go to Campbell River, Vancouver Island, party for a couple, 3 days. Be put on a float plane or a water taxi and brought to a logging camp that they're shutting down for the winter. And I lived there by myself watching it, keeping the motors running. And one day I was on a treadmill. It was a barge camp, big steel barges, 100 feet long or so, three of them tied together and 2 stories high of like hotels. They had workout centers, dining room, dry room for all the clothes, bedrooms for all the workers, showers, wash, laundry facilities. So I was in the exercise room on the second floor and I'm on a treadmill jogging away because the year before, I gained over 50 pounds watching that same logging camp. I found the frozen French fries, chicken strips, and fish patties. The deep fryer, I fired it
Oh
up.
yeah.
Don't recommend that. So that second year
Mm,
watching that camp, I was behaving how I ate and using the treadmill and other equipment daily. And as I'm treadmilling away, I look out the window and maybe 180 yards away on the beach at low tide and daytime was this black bear. I'm like, oh, black bear. Kept jogging. I'm like, wait a minute. First week of January. It's below zero out there, freezing. It's a foot and a
yeah.
half of snow. I go, black bear's awake. So I looked again. That black bear stood up on two legs and walked,
Oh,
squatted down. I'm like, Jesus, that's a true enough a Sasquatch harvesting shellfish. So I ran down the barge 100 feet down to the kitchen, which brought me closer to the Sasquatch by 100 feet. And I put my binoculars up. And I was watching it smashing clams and eating the meat. I could see his lips, his facial movements, because you got to remember, I was a hunting guide. So my binoculars were long and very, very powerful. They were worth $1,000 made by Zeiss. So I got to
man,
watch that Sasquatch for almost half an hour, harvesting his
details.
shellfish and eating.
Wow.
And when he got up and turned and walked into the bush, I put the binoculars down. And I was just in awe. I was just like, wow. Oh, shit.
Oh,
Hmm.
Had a camera in my suitcase. I should have taken a picture.
yeah, that does happen. Wow. I bet you're like, no one's gonna believe me after this.
Yeah. And,
Yeah.
but other encounters I had anchored out my commercial fish boat I was captain of in the early 90s, just afterwards. And me and my native crewman and my girlfriend and my non native engineer friend were all on the boat. And just after dark, we're cooking a big pot of crabs, Dungeness crabs. They're really big, cooking them in a big pot on hatch covers out on deck with a Coleman stove. And we're sitting there, and all of a sudden, we just heard this bang. My 26-foot trailer with a 10 by 10 wooden addition I'd built was on the beach. I call it my cabin. And, I'm like thinking, what was that bang? Was it one of the kerosene cans empty underneath that I use for my kerosene heater in cold times? And I'm like, no, I took those out last year when I left. They're in my garage at home, the two blue cans. And then all of a sudden we heard this whistle, chirp, warble, like lip slapping. And all of a sudden, well, it's Yahweh. Big, big stink. And it's just like, oh. And then you heard that screech again. And I'm thinking, it's not mink fighting. It's not a hoot owl, not Bard's owl, not a kit fox. What the hell is that? And all of a sudden, you saw two big shadows walk vertically along the side of the addition in the trailer. And with the moon out, no wind, we could see clearly they were bipedal. And the height of that trailer, they were looked like 7 to 8 foot. So I went to the galley door and Jojo, turn down that boom box. You two get out on deck. We think we got two Sasquatches on beach. So they came out.
Hmm.
And Jojo, my girlfriend, goes, boy, that beach stinks tonight. And Dean turned, who dug shellfish with her as teenagers to make money together because they're good friends. He goes, Josie, when have you ever smelled the beach that bad at low tide? And besides that, it's half tide rising. And then she looked at me, what is it, Tom? And I said, I think we got a Sasquatch. And all of a sudden, whistle, chirp, warble again. So I'm like, let's go put the spotlight on it. So they walked up to the bow along the side of the cabin. I went to the galley into the wheelhouse, grabbed the spotlight handle and turned the spotlight. And Dean was outside looking at it. And he says, there, right, you're angled about perfect. And I said, three, two, one. And I hit the switch on the wall. And I illuminated up a big male who dropped on one knee with his arm in front of his face, and a
oh,
female on the high tide area of the beach. I think she was harvesting uh, bear grass, sea asparagus. She just dropped on her knees and her elbows on the ground, and you could see her eye reflecting under her right armpit at my spot. 1.5 eyes as it was breathing. For over 20 minutes, we had that spotlight on them. We even brought a camera out, but we couldn't find any film. We threw apples and potatoes towards them in the water, trying to get them to move in the spotlight, but they wouldn't. And I'm thinking, geez, my boat was built in 1927. It's a company boat. I don't even know how old my batteries are, and I'm running off batteries right now. I better turn my spotlight off. So I turned it off, and you could hear them get up and both walk through the grass and scrub trees, and then all of a sudden into the wall of the forest. And you could hear crack, crunch, crunch, and all of a sudden that sound of a rotten tree being pushed down. The next day we confirmed that tree was, it was about 14 inches in diameter, rotten, of course, but it put that Sasquatch pushed it down. So half hour goes by, nothing. So Jojo and Trevor, they're in bed and in their bunks. Dean and I stayed up. About half hour later into dark, all of a sudden one of those we call them shag pokes, blue herons. They're a big heron bird, like a crane. You hear it get spooked in the bay. It flies out past my boat in the moonlight. Something spooked it. And then you could hear that as it was walking on the boulders and they were moving. Hit the spotlight again, got eye reflection, turned it off, and then it came along the beach, paralleling my boat. And that's when we really got a good sight of it. And that thing was probably 8.5 foot tall. It was one big Sasquatch. And the same area, which is my tribal territories, in 2012, we had were tasked by my chief and council to build 5 cabins for adventure tourism. Our island sits right where the killer whales, humpback whales, cruise ships go by, and other wildlife. So it was a great place for tourism ventures. So we're building these cabins, and into late September, I told my 2 native crewmen, cousins of mine, you guys, when you go to the outhouse, make sure you go 2 at a time. I said, Chonok has been probing our camp. Baloney. Here to season us. Come with me. I said, when it blows northwest, they're right here, downwind from us. I said, I brought that plastic milk crate for a reason. I said, look at the grass. It's all flattened where it's been standing by these hemlock trees. I put the box down and stood up, and I said, here, stand on it with me. My cousin stood there with me. I said, look what it's looking at. It's looking over the blue tarp that we have all our equipment under and tools so it doesn't get wet. And it's looking at our picnic table where we sit, eat, and talk and drink pop and play crib at night. And always just like, geez. And I said, well, come with me to the other side of camp. And it's blowing southeast. They're downwind up on the rock bluff. Look at all the sticks where it's been standing and sitting. All the branches that have broken and fallen on the forest floor, pummeled into pulp, because that's how many times it's been sitting there. And I said, like, look what he's looking at. Our picnic table and our bedroom window. That's scary. I said, that's what I'm telling you. I said, you go to the outhouse 2 at a time. And they go, what about you? I said, I'm not afraid of no Sasquatch. Besides that, I go to the outhouse with my 12 gauge. We knew we were being probed. And then finally, we noticed, I was giving them heck. I'm like, where the hell did all the garlic go? And who's been my apples? I thought you guys don't have teeth. You don't eat apples. And he said, we're not eating your apples. We got no teeth. And typical the Indian voice, and right off the res. And they said, no, we're not touching the garlic. And so I said, I think maybe it's the mice. So we put a garlic clove out, never got touched. And then next night we left it out again. Next morning it was gone. So I'm thinking, no mice turds on where we left it. Well, let's put the garlic clove under a clear glass. And then we're sitting at the picnic table. We had a wood stove outside, so we're nice and warm between the 2 cabins. And the cabins were about maybe 8 feet apart. So we're in a little concave area of the wood stove outside, and we're really warm at the picnic table. So we're sitting there. We put the garlic under the cup. Still daylight a bit. And one of the boys, John, goes, hey, I'm going to go to the cooler, grab some Pepsi. Anyone want a Pepsi? I said, yeah, grab me one. All of a sudden, he goes around the corner, comes running back. the garlic clove's gone. Come on. And we ran over there, and I stupidly grabbed the empty upside down glass and lifted it to, and I'm like, shit, what did I go do that for? We should have bagged that cup and brought it into the police station on Alert Bay. They could have fingerprinted it and probably shown us big Sasquatch fingerprints, because now I knew mice don't lift cups to get at the garlic, nor can a bird.
Yep.
So a couple nights later, I'm sitting there and I'm having a smoke, and I'm outside the cabin because they're brand new. We're going to use them for tourism. I can't smoke inside. And they look like native longhouses. And so, anyway, I'm standing outside on what would be the porch, and with a little bit of the roof over my head as it's drizzling and blowing westerly wind, smoking my cigarette. All of a sudden, this branch comes flying in from my left from the forest, lands on the grass. And I'm like, wind's coming this way, and the stick comes this way. That don't make sense. Stick going against the wind. So I went to the edge of the camera, took another drag on my butt, flicked it, and I jumped, turned 180 in the air, and now I'm looking behind the side of my cabin to the bushes where the trail is to the outhouse in the interior of the island, and there's this juvenile teenager, 6'6", lanky, brown faced Sasquatch. He jumped, I yelled, it yelled, he turned and ran, I turned and ran, I jumped in the cabin, and Darcy's like, quit picking on the Kwakwaka'wakw. You're scaring me. I'm like, he scared me too. It was a teenager one. I said, that's probably who's been stealing my garlic. So the next night I set him up. I put some garlic on the table, and just before dark, I climbed out the window of our cabin. Darcy and I were in. He goes, what are you doing? I said, whatever happens, don't you use that 30-30. I'll take my 12 gauge with me. I said, I'm going to go put the spook on that Sasquatch. But no, I'm not going to shoot it or kill it or warn it with a gunshot. I'm just bringing it for safety. So when I crawled out the window by the picnic table, I crawled on my belly through the big piles of leaves and broken branches and cut up small trees that we've been piling up, waiting for the November monsoon so we can burn it without having a forest fire on the island, because it's only 250 acres. So as I'm crawling through all of the piles of leaves, I get to the entrance to the trail to the outhouse, and there's a big pile of alder leaves. They're kind of like cottonwood leaves or maple leaves, brown, dry. But I purposely put it there, and I crawled in there and I buried myself sitting up just with my sliver I could see out. And I wasn't there half an hour when all of a sudden that teenage son of a gun come walking down the timber looking at the backs of my camp and cabins. And he reached up with his left arm and he grabbed a alder tree, about, I guess, 5 inches in diameter. I could see his hand grab it. And that's when I noticed that the skin on his palms was not pink, but tan. But on the back of his hand was blackish and spotty with brown. He grabbed it and it was an old skidder trail from logging decades before. So it had a big, like a 5-foot berm on either side. And it stepped down with its right leg off that berm, looking at the back of my cabin. And as he put his right foot down, my foot in the leaves was probably no more than 5 feet from him. And all of a sudden, I come shooting out of the leaves. Hey, you from my camp and leave my garlic and apples alone. And he pulled that tree, jumped up, roared, scared the bejesus out of him. Pulled the tree so hard it was snapping and leaves were falling because it was fall. He looks at me and he goes, ah. And I jumped out of the leaves. You, this is my camp. Quit stealing my food. Find your own. And he turned and he ran through the bushes, cracking branches and small trees. I'm laughing away. I run to the cabin. I jump in. There's Darcy with the 30-30. He's picking on Juno. I'm not picking on him. I'm making a stand. This is my camp, my food. You're not welcome here. And then the next day, we saw his dad, and he had leaves buried on him. And when he stood up, he looked at me eye to eye and went, turned up the hill into the forest, and peace was made. Him and his son swam off the island. So a lot of people ask me, why was he doing that? I said, he was training his son, teenager. If there's a hairless bipedal human that if you can get in there and steal his food, look through the windows when he's sleeping and not be heard or smelled or anything, then you're passing your training. I've been training you how to be stealthy, how to break silhouette, how to use windage. Sasquatches are humans of the night, humans of the forest. So everything we know about being good hunters, they in turn do it, but way better than us. I always tell people they
Oh
have
yeah.
forgotten more about windage and breaking silhouette, hiding
Hmm.
and walking quiet in the forest than we will ever know. But I do play bush chess. That means when I know a Sasquatch is around, and we've
Uh,
done it in Omaha Indian Reserve when I went down there investigating. I've done it in British Columbia. I've done it here in Washington State. I go Sasquatch mode and I use windage and breaking silhouette and crawling, not so much now being 60 with diabetic bad right leg, but I can still do it and I still do. And three
mhm.
times I have checkmated or I've looking at a Sasquatch back of his head or back of his back. And then I've pulled the branch down and let it go as I turned and walked away. And one time I heard one, he was mad that I turned the tables. He became the hunted. He was not the hunter. And that's bush chess. And if you're a good hunter, a good bushman, bushwoman, then you want to use windage. And the other one, lick your fingers and shove them in your nose. Get those nose hairs wet. Just like a dog, a coyote, a bear, a badger. They lick their noses to get those nose hairs wet so they increase their ability to smell. Sasquatches do the same thing. And a good hunter human like me does it as well. But the next time you do it, use the other two fingers.
Definitely gonna try that. Definitely gonna try that. You hear that, Darren? That's some good. That's
Yeah,
some good.
yeah,
Good tips right there. We definitely gotta
yeah,
try
right on.
some bush squatching on our race.
Right.
Oh man, that's some
Uh,
good stuff right there. You got any questions,
now,
Darren?
You're
uh, uh, I was kind of curious why you call it a female Bigfoot. Was it? Did you see the chest on the that Bigfoot, or
oh yeah. No,
was
the
it just the
young one that I spooked coming out of the leaves and its father, they were big males. The majority that I've seen have been males. I see a pregnant female with very pronounced boobs and a big, pronounced pregnant belly. Walking beside
wow?
it, probably a 7 foot
Wow!
and a half male. But one of the things that really intrigued me about those two was they had that hang lip. Like we're Indians. We know what it's like to see someone who suffers from fetal alcohol syndrome extremely bad. They have that
Oh,
same
the
look
lip
as
cliff.
well.
They call
And
that.
and we've seen
Uh,
the shows about hillbillies, like Deliverance, they got
oh
that
yeah, he does
Cro-Magnon
have eyes.
glazed donut face because they're inbred. That's what they're portraying in the movie, but you know, it's stereotypical. But anyway, no disrespect to the non-Indians and the Indians that suffer from those afflictions, but we know that look. And Omaha Indian Reserve, when you look at the Google Earth, you'll notice that the Indian Reserve made up of the Southeast Omaha tribe, the Winnebagos up in the Northeast, the Ho Chucks in the Northwest. You'll notice that it's all hardwood enclave. All around it, the non-Indian farmers have clear cut it for generations of trees, and it's all industrial farms. So within the thousands of acres of the Omaha Indian Reservation, where I learned the term they're Sasquatches. There's so many, it's on like Donkey Kong. And we got 16 FLIR captures there in 2 weeks and a
Wow.
videotape of 3 minutes, 40 seconds of one walking at daylight. There's a lot of Sasquatch, Sitonga, they call them there, keeper of the medicine. Amazing learning I learned from the Omaha people about Sitonga, Sasquatch. But I think they're inbreeding. They can't escape that enclave. And that's why the male and female had that really hillbilly FAS severe look to their faces, which is, a travesty, but it's definitely something.
Is it that's why you would find four toed or three toed tracks sometimes?
That's, I suspect that because there is a four-toed track we found in Omaha. I think of that. Other regions, I don't know. I'm gonna probably give it more because they're vast areas. I'll give it
Yeah.
probably more to um, injury than anything,
Oh yeah.
because as we know, and you stated in the beginning of the show about your both last names and you Indians are breeding like rabbits. Well, I was born in 1965, and we had about 700 Kwakwaka'wakw in my tribe.
Wow.
And my mother's side, I can't remember the number, but it was pretty low as well, like in the hundreds. Well, 1967, Roger Patterson and Bob Gimlin film Patty in Bluff Creek, California.
Uh-huh.
And ever since those two dates of my birth of 65 and 67, we've noticed, even in the last 20 years, 25 years, that the populations of my two Indian tribes, as well as others, and Sasquatches, has seemed to explode
Explode.
because we're proliferating like bunny rabbits. So, one of the things as an investigator, and I'm well educated back in my high school days and that, and I've always been a seeker of knowledge. I ask the questions most people will never think of. So when I sit there with the native elders, I'll ask them, do you have any accounts about Sasquatches getting smallpox, influenza, tuberculosis, Spanish flu like our native people did? And all of a sudden, a couple of them have, oh, geez, I haven't thought about that when I was a little girl. But I remember my dad talking about how he was a chief, and I'm 95 now, but how just when I was born was we had bad Spanish flu going around or some sickness. And back in his younger days, they remember the Sasquatches, the men telling him as a chief, Chief, you better come outside and look. The Sasquatches are at the edge of the tree line. And the chief came out and noticed, like everyone else, that they were holding their young, they were dragging their sick, covered in smallpox or coughing during the time of tuberculosis and blood coming out their mouth and nose. And the chief would tell the people, go get our sick and show them that we too are sick with this disease and we don't know how to cure it. And they would do that. And on two occasions, the Sasquatch would turn and carry and drag and shuffle back into the forest. And one tribe told me, we thought they were extinct because we lost 96% of our people. We almost became extinct. But in the
Wow.
last 30 years, we're getting more reports about our Sasquatch that we've always shared our homelands with. So they didn't become extinct. They
Wow.
survived the diseases as us. So that's a
Mhm.
question that needs to be asked of
That's
all
beautiful.
Indigenous elders.
Yeah.
Ask them about
Um,
that.
I got something to add to that. I did come across a story where the Spanish flu, the early 1900s,
Yep.
the Sasquatch would be coming down and taking the sick kids, and then they'll be bringing them back down a couple of days later. Well, no more sickness, and they'd be taking the kids like that. And then like the genocide days when all the tribes in the United States were trying to take us all out, they left a lot of kids in a hogan that were disabled, that they couldn't run. So they were in that hogan, and these Sasquatch came around, would make fire for them and make food for them and help them if they were sick and took care of them the whole 8, 9 years while their families were hiding out in the mountains. And then when they came back, they seen that same hogan with fire coming out. They ran over there. They were crying, and then they found all their kids well and alive. And they said, "Who took care of you?" They said, "The hairy people. It's the hairy holy men that took care of us and gave us medicine, brought food, brought water, brought everything we needed." And then it all goes back to where we're hiding out in this canyon, where these Sasquatches would take juniper berries and put them in bags for us so we can eat them while we're hiding in those high canyons. So it's pretty amazing. And just imagine how many other tribes have similar stories. And, I think it needs to be out there, It needs to be out there.
Well, that's what it's all
Yeah,
about. Like I said, when I first were introduced to you two today, I didn't know you were a North American Indian based podcast, and it enthralled me. And, the respect to you two, keep it up, keep going with it. And if any way I can help, I will. But that's exactly what we have to do. We were forced into our Indian reserves, and a lot of the non Indians look at us the same way. You were put in the confines of the Indian reserves, and we would, so that when we wanted to see you, we would see you, and we wanted to hear you, we would hear you. but the majority of the time we don't want anything to do with you. So that stigma is still attached to us native people. A lot of times, that's why I became a videographer, and we do Sasquatch interviews and videos. You can see it in Sasquatch Island if you go to my Facebook group, my YouTube channel as well, Sasquatch Island. But I always tell the white producers that come to me and network guys, oh, we want to interview natives and this and that. I'm like, give it up. As soon as you white guys go in and put your camera on, you're going to have Zip Ug Indian. Oh, and you're going to interview them. Oh, do you guys have Sasquatches? Yep. Do you have stories about Sasquatches? Yep.
Yeah, I was
Ug Indian. You're going to get it all the time because we don't trust Whitey. No offense to the non-Indians listening, but that's where we're at. So by me going there and being, looking like I'm a NASCAR driver with all my patches and badges, well, Indians like shiny items. They like a Sasquatch celebrity coming in and
you need
putting
a
a mic
you
up
need a
and a TV
you need a
cameras.
Pepsi. You need a Pepsi
Yeah.
patch right here. Just kidding.
But
yeah,
actually, I got my sponsor, SasquatchAlegend.com.
That's
They
nice.
are my
oh,
I like
sponsor.
that.
right there. Look it
Yeah.
up,
I like
checking
But
it out.
you know what?
it.
What we need to do, and have more of the Indian tribes need to come forward. And
Yes.
like I
Yes.
educate the non-Indian, when you're going to investigate a region, the first thing you do is you have to investigate the local Indian tribe. You have to go to your library, the internet, and learn about that tribe. Learn the anthropological and cultural path journey they've taken over thousands of years to a certain degree, where they went to harvest different seasonal foods, where they took shelters in the wintertime, things like that. And then
Yeah.
after you get a good understanding of those people, you need to go to your local Indian tribe and you need to parlay protocol with them and ask permission. Can I investigate Sasquatch in your traditional territories? Some tribes will tell you absolutely not. We don't even talk about it. And we don't want you doing it. Some tribes might be smart and go, yeah, we'll give you a permit, but you got to hire one of our hunters to take you so that you don't go to sacred areas and you don't do anything disrespectful to the Sasquatch. And yeah, we'll show you where the structures are and tracks. We're good with that, but it's going to cost you $1,000 per day. And if you want to film,
Hmm.
it's going to cost you 10,000 per day
Oh.
because we Indians got to make a stand. We have a lot of knowledge about Sasquatch and other things. And the days of getting it for free so you can make thousands off your book or your TV show are over. Like us taking
Mhm.
on casinos and running them, it's our turn to make some buck. And if you want to investigate Sasquatch in our traditional territories, it's up to each individual tribe. But me, I do Sasquatch expeditions. I tell people I will teach you how to get close to a Sasquatch, how to identify where they are. So hopefully you will have the close encounter of the hairy kind and get us some good conclusive video or audio or pictures and or maybe even DNA. But
Mhm.
if you're going to learn this, you're going to pay $275 a day US to me per person, and I'll teach you. I'll bring you on expeditions for $275 per vehicle for 8 hours. And it's an industry. Like people, I've seen the depression in our Indian reserves in our communities and our families. And, we're sitting here right now in a gold mine that like Omaha Indian Reserve, and I did their tourism analysis and then the report on what I recommended for them to do for tourism to put their people to work because unemployment levels is astronomical in that Indian Reserve. That's where they brought me in under contract. I recommended taking this one bay on the Missouri River and making it a marina for moorage to be charged to the non-Indians to tie up there and to sell gas and chocolate bars and candy and pop to the fishermen going up and down that river. And then I also recommended that they open up mountain trails through the hardwood forest and don't log that forest because of the Sasquatches and the revenue you can make from mountain bike trails, zip line adventures, because they're right by the freeway, but also You got the 12 passenger and the 20 passenger vehicles for transporting your tribe members around, out of the reserve, within the reserve, to and from the casino. You have the licensed drivers that are tribe members. You have the insurance. Put a $15,000-$20,000 FLIR on the roof. Looks like R2D2 from Star Wars. Flat screens in the bus. Drive around the Indian Reserve at night and show them on FLIR, night vision, on screen, the coyotes, the deer, the other animals, and your Sitonga, the Sasquatch. Come up with guidelines that you will never bring that vehicle or people within 300 yards of the Sitonga. Give the Sitonga its space. But if you do those tours, charging grizzly bear tours in coastal British Columbia are $475 per person. To go on a 12 passenger boat or a 24 passenger boat to be brought up an inlet to an Indian reserve to go up to bear watching towers. Whale watching is now $250 per person to go on the waters. And the Indians are taking over the industry. I was the pioneer, the first one. And I'll send you a picture of my tour boat with native orca design painted on the bow and
Awesome.
everything to show the viewers.
Hmm.
But Sasquatch expeditions, tours, we have, like behind me, you see that Chonach house posts in one of our kilksies, our ceremonial big houses. On the dirt floor I'm standing on, you will see the Chonach mask and fur regalia come out with a basket on its back for my family, other families with a baby or different things. We all have our own interpretation of our Sasquatch encounter with by an ancestor. And then you'll see Bukwus, the little people, 3, 4 feet tall, covered in greenish hair, hiding behind their arm as they move like a little bird. And their Bukwus is the keeper of the ghost road. But I hear the stories of stick people and little people from many other tribes on Turtle Island, Sasquatch Island, North America. And, you know, bringing forth your culture and heritage and sharing it with the non-Indians. They're chomping at the bit. They'll be lined up days and weeks ahead of time making reservations to come to your Indian reserve to understand about your Sasquatch, to see your pictographs and petroglyphs of Sasquatch, to hear the accounts of your ancestors and your beliefs, perspectives, understanding, and encounters. And that's what I'm doing. And I'm my leg blew out the end of April. I had to retire from commercial fishing after 45 years. I was
Wow.
just going to do native art and possibly go to a sports store and put my application in to be the guy who looks after the gun department, sports department, because of my hunting experience and knowledge of rifles and everything. And all of a sudden, when I flew back into SeaTac Airport, my wife and I live in Kent, Washington. When I'm not when I wasn't up in Canada, commercial fishing and doing Sasquatch expeditions. And anyway, I had to bring a vehicle to Fort Washington for my friends, SasquatchTheLegend.com store and museum. So when I phoned them that night, I said, "How about I stay there a couple paychecks?" "Oh, why don't you stay there till our May conference in a month, and we'll see you out there because you're going to perform at the conference anyway with your masks and regalia with you and your wife." I'm like, "Yeah, okay." So I brought their truck over here, and a couple of weeks later, I phoned Peggy. I said, "What do you think about me staying here running this store for 5.25 years until I get my full retirement at 65 in Canada?" And I said, "We have a beautiful house to stay in, owned by the company. We have a vehicle and ours, and we got all these beaches around us that are just amazing and giant rainforest. And it is on like Donkey Kong with Sasquatches out here." And she's like, "Yeah, let's do it." So here we are. Carpe
It's meant
diem,
to be.
seize the day, living the dream, you know.
Yep.
So anyone listening, you want to come out here, you're more than welcome to come here. I'll take you on the expedition. We'll show you our native masks and regalia, perform it for you. And for the other
Cool.
ones listening that can't travel out here, pass the hat around. That's what we used to do on the boats and in the net loss. Fill it up with money and change. And then we'll go to send someone to the beer parlor or liquor store to get our beer so we can have a cold one. Pass your
Right.
hat around to your fellow Sasquatch enthusiasts, your Indian tribe. Tell them, look, we can fill up our casino hotel rooms and our conference center and charge $150 a person for VIP dinners. And we'll have Tom and Peggy come and other natives like Mel Scahan and Shelley Covington, Montana, And the list goes on of Indians that are now getting into the Sasquatch industry to speak at conferences and perform. And then we can call the natives, reach out to our native tribe and say, look, our casino is going to have a Sasquatch conference in 6 months. You bead makers and other artists might want to start making Sasquatch stuff to sell to the non-Indians that are going to come here in the hundreds. And they're all going to want to pull out their cards and cash and buy your art with native design. I see
Yep.
the earrings beaded, the pendants going for $275 to $500. And Sasquatch is an industry. And then a lot of people tell me, how can you commodify Sasquatch? I'm like, well, number one, remember, I'm a Kwakwaka'wakw, raised in the Kwakwaka'wakw culture. And I know my history. When the first sailing ship came and dropped the rusty anchor in a bay in front of one of our villages, the first thing the chief said was, ooh, get my paddlers, get my wives. We're going to that ship. We got dried fish, we got sea otter pelts, we got this, we got that. I want that pistol. I want that rifle. I want that lead for ball. I want the powder. I want the fabric for my wife and the pots and pans because happy wife, happy life. I am a chief, but a woman's a woman. So let's
Mhm.
do a trade.
Trade.
Oh, but we want your masks. We want your totem poles. We want your memorial pole, not memorial poles, your welcoming poles. We want your baskets, your bentwood boxes. And some of the chiefs would talk to their people. Yeah, I guess we could sell a bit of that. That pole is getting pretty rotten. It's going to fall down in another couple of years anyway. It's a welcoming pole. It served its use. We'll just make another one. Let's sell it to that sailing ship. And that's how they got their stuff. But one of the things when you do the research, like I have, you'll notice that the museums, a lot of it was lost during the Second World War in Europe. The Pacific Northwest Chonachwa Sasquatch carving was a high sought after item because they knew it was the highest ranked trust of the Kwakwaka'wakw tribe in Lechwata, but they also know it was held in high regard by most Indian tribes. So a lot of the antiquity Sasquatch stuff are still there in the museums of North America and Europe, Australia, and Asia even. So when you do the research, you'll see the massive Jonah poles like the one behind me. There's one, I believe it's in Chicago, and another one that's Smithsonian, and another one in the Canadian Civilization Museum of Man in Ottawa or Quebec in the east of Canada. So how can we commodify Sasquatch? Heck, our ancestors did it. Why the heck can't we do it now? Just because you're getting all highfalutin and you say, "Oh, Tom, I can't believe you call yourself an Indian." You know, we're actually indigenous, First Nation, North American Indian, or
Oh.
North American Native. We're not Indians. Indians are from India. Oh, get off your high horse. Indian is the most optimized word on the search engines on the computer to find our indigenous businesses, art, stores, gas stations, whatever. No non-native types in Aboriginal resorts, Aboriginal gas stations, because I'm going to go there and tell that Indian in Canada who can use a status card and axe the tax on my gas and cigarettes, hey, I'll pay you $10 if you fill my tank up with my jerry cans. So people use Indian. I was in tourism. I still am. Indian's the most optimized word. I was born an Indian. I've lived in Indian. My card in my wallet says Indian, Canadian Indian status card. And by God, I'll die proudly an Indian. So get off your high horse. And yeah, if you want to make money with Sasquatch, reach out to me. I'll help you.
Yeah, that's all true right there. Like a lot of for our tribe, even mentioning Sasquatch, talking about Sasquatch, even thinking about Sasquatch, you get a quick slap to the face, or you're like, hey, you don't talk about it, don't think about it. I'm like, oh my gosh, okay, but hey, there's something taking our animals outside, leaving huge tracks outside, and then you
Yeah,
you
it's
find the
I
medicine
totally
man.
respect the tribes that are like that.
Yeah,
I'll never go
yeah,
ask to investigate there unless they invite me. I'll never,
yeah.
like me with people always ask me, what do you know the legend about the white Sasquatch? And I'm like, yeah, I do. I've heard it a couple times by different families. "Oh, can you share it with us? Absolutely not. Doesn't come from my gildas, my family's box of treasure. It's not my title, not my property. I can't talk about the white
Uh,
Sasquatch legend or this
Mm.
legend or that legend. So it's once again right back to ground zero about Sasquatch and us as native tribes respecting one
yeah.
another.
Oh yeah. Exactly.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. We call them
I hear you.
the children of the night. That's one of the words we used to call them. Like made the agreements. You know, we roam around the daytime. You guys are at night, and we'll respect each
Yep.
other's territories. Yeah.
Yep. That's why I
Yeah.
call them humans of the night.
What would you say to our non-believer listeners if there's still some right now listening?
Those ones that got a crucifix on their necklace. I don't know about you, but you seen your God? Because I've seen our Sasquatch a few times. And to the others out there, um, jump in an airplane, bring up binoculars, and make sure you book a window seat so you can look out. And travel 4 states, travel across 3 provinces. Better yet, fly up to Alaska or up to Northwest Territories, Canada, to Yellowknife. It's a big city. It's not even in the Arctic Circle. And with your binoculars, look out as I do when I go on an airplane. What I'm doing is reconning where the Sasquatches would be, because and enjoying the beauty down below. I was flying
Mm.
over your guys' territory, looking at those big red pillars in the desert with the
Oh, Magna
sunrise
Valley.
coming up.
Oh
I'm
yeah,
elbowing
that's
my
my
wife.
home.
You gotta look at this. You gotta look. It's beautiful. I'd never seen that before, other than TV and magazines. And here I
Yeah.
am, 35,000 feet with my binoculars looking at it.
You
Yeah.
should have
And
next.
so
Uh,
look out the window and realize just how flipping big Turtle Island, Sasquatch Island, North America really
mm-hmm.
is. And when you look out there and walk as I have, I've spent months in the forest by myself and with my cousin when he was alive. And we would go from sea level through the timberline into the alpines, and we would spend weeks, months up in the alpines because it's such a beautiful area that very humans go. And then he'd come to me because he had severe FAS, and he'd be all whimpering away. I'm like, "What's wrong? What's up, Wayne? They're watching us." Saw them look at me. They grimace at you or they smile. They just smiled. That's that. And they're happy. We're not bothering them. They aren't bothering us. Be cool. Let's go to sleep. It's getting dark. And we'd wake up, hear them, smell them from time to time. And we'd just, yo, week says Chonacha. Hello, how you doing, Sasquatch? We just lay Chonacha. What are you up to? And you'd hear, and they'd just
Mm,
move off because they could tell by the way we were reaching out to them. And they understand our language because they're shamans of many tribes are,
yeah.
have, or used to interact by going out and doing like Diane Fossey did with gorillas and Jane Goodall did with chimpanzees. They go into the forest. So, for example, your tribes, I mean, back in the day, all of a sudden, neighboring tribe attacks you. After the skirmish, oh, gee, some of our children are taken as slaves. Oh, we lost a couple warriors. And oh, there's our shaman. Arrow through his eyeball. Oh, yeah, he's
Yeah.
stone cold dead. Now what are we going to do? We just lost our doctor. Then tribe member stands up, male or female. Well, I used to ask a lot of questions to the shaman. I like the path. I'll volunteer. I'm going to need some dry meat, dry fish, some this, that, and the other thing. I'm going to go into their world. I'll see you when I get back. And they go in,
Ah,
and they're still doing it. Some tribe members in different
yeah.
tribes, and they'll go out for months, a few years at a time, and they return because they interacted like the Omaha call their Sasquatch with their Sasquatch, Sitonga, keeper of the medicine in Omaha. So when they go forth, they come back with the knowledge of the plants, roots, flowers, leaves, bark, cambium layer, you name it. They have the medicine knowledge and they become the shaman, the doctor of the tribe,
Hmm.
and they learn it
That's
from the
true.
Sasquatch.
Yeah, that's
Because when I was learning
interesting.
from an
Hmm.
Omaha medicine woman all of this, I asked her, I said, how old does a Sasquatch get after 5 days of my lessons? And she goes, 150, 180 years. The ones that are
Wow.
whitish gray, little bit
Oh,
older. My
mhm.
grandmother told me they knew of one that was over 200, little over 200, white. How did he get so old?
Wow.
I'm like, what was that for? You listening to me? 5 days I've been teaching you, Tom. Sitonga, keeper of the medicine. They have forgotten more about medicinal plants and remedies than we hairless ones will ever know. No, so I have to start listening to me more. Real anti that one.
Oh, yeah.
Listeners are pretty intrigued. We've been on here almost
Uh,
an hour now, but
oh, yeah,
if you want
yeah.
to know
Time
more,
flies.
you can go through SasquatchLegend.com and order my book. It's 1999. It's got a lot of stuff in there, pictures and everything. You also buy my shirts and cups and tumblers with my native designs on there, Sasquatch, and I have whale ones and fish ones and Thunderbird ones as well. But
Mhm.
Sasquatch Island Facebook group has to join it. It is the encyclopedia of Sasquatch. I have not only put my knowledge and beliefs and perspectives and understanding and encounters, I've put the understanding of others as well. And I'm respectful of tribal names, of course, unless they give me permission to use their name or tribe name when what tribe they're affiliated with. And then YouTube, you want to be thoroughly entertained at a different level of Sasquatch, go to Sasquatch Island YouTube channel. There's some really good stuff on there, but the unique one is the years of me being a commercial fisherman. I'm on the bow or deck of these big aluminum steel monstrosity commercial fish boats plying through British Columbia regions most humans will never see in their lifetime. And I'm
Mhm.
talking about the reports from the local tribes, where Les Stroud went to Clem 2, how he learned from me to go there, and the Kitasoo Hey Hey tribe that's from there, and their stories they shared with me about Sasquatch and other tribes, and even
Mhm.
John Green, the old guard non-native guy from the 70s that wrote many books and was one of our founding members of the, I guess you say, the building of interest of Sasquatch, like
Yeah.
Bob Gimlin and Peter Byrne and my late friend Dr. John Bindernagel from Vancouver Island. But his book talks about places in British Columbia close. And here I am on a fish boat saying that's where he writes about that guy from the cannery at Butedale going across on his boat and fishing for salmon. But as he came around behind the island, there was two Sasquatches swimming to the shore of the mainland. And it took
Wow.
place right there. And I'm videotaping it.
That's
And,
amazing.
so I got a lot to give people. If people want to be interviewed by me, we do podcasts, video casts, video productions for television and that. Just reach out to me. And the other one is, the native people are listening to me. Tell your tribes to get me out to your guys' casinos and resorts so that Peggy and I can perform our West Coast native regalia of Sasquatch and other animals.
I'm for that. I'm for
Yeah,
that.
I'm all yeah, same. Well, it's been really good hearing uh, the the tribal perspective of the Bigfoot. Uh, some people just see it and they see it as a monster. They terrorize her in the night or stuff like that. But people just really got to open their eyes and realize like that's a human, that's a being, that's it walks around on the earth like us, and I'm pretty sure they
Yep.
have families, like, and just the the white way, just they don't know, they just wanted to kill it, destroy it, and like why do that? Like, what is it doing to you? Like, let it live, let you live, let let these Bigfoot live in peace. Like, how would you like it if someone went in your house and just kicked mud all over your couch and stuff like that?
Yeah.
It's
Let's
it's
take
just
the
Yeah.
B
there's
word. I,
Oh,
I
yeah.
don't use the B word to describe Sasquatch. I'll use big
yes,
fellas,
Beast.
Sasquatch, because in
Sasquatch.
Canada we have a tribe that was recognized as Chippewa up in Northwest Territories. And they've been fighting for decades. When I was up there in 2015 and 16, they finally made progress that everything would be changed in Canada. So they'll be referred to what they actually are called tribally, Dene
Hmm.
or Lutzoke. And the list
Hey.
goes on. But Chippewa, which they were referred to, these many tribes, was from my mother's nation, Cree, who would go up there and war with them. and call them Chippewa, big noses. So calling the B word to Sasquatch, I think is very derogatory and know our history, so we're never destined to repeat its failures as we did with the Dene people up in northern Canada provinces and Northwest Territories. And I think that's a good start with the non-natives, educating them. Maybe we should call it
Yes, yes,
what our tribe calls it in this area, or
yes.
the
That
generic North American Sasquatch Island name, Sasquatch.
yeah.
Yep. I
I hear
agree.
you. Like this is the first time I actually heard it pronounced in a different cultural
How do you say it
state.
again?
You
One
know.
more time. To
Yeah.
Nakwa, or how do you say Sasquatch again?
Unakwa
Unakwa. Okay.
in my language.
Yeah.
And
Unakwa.
my mother, I asked her in the Cree side, she just talked to her sisters and brother, and they just said Witago, what a lot of people call Windigo. In our Cree area,
Wow.
we refer to Sasquatch as Witago.
I think that part needs to
Hmm.
be said out there because everyone thinks Wendigo is a cryptid, a different cryptid, That's really good stuff right there. For
Yeah.
our tribe is Yeito. Then our other neighbor
Yeah.
tribe here, the Hopi, they call him Masawu. He gives life or death. Pretty interesting.
Yep.
I went around Hopi land investigating, and he's who roams around the creeks over there. The creeks, the washes, and takes dogs, cats. So it's pretty amazing creature, to be studying.
Yep.
I'm always learning. But yeah, for our listeners again, that's Tom Sewid. You can find him on Sasquatch Island on Facebook, Sasquatch Island on YouTube channel. Some really good information out there, and being all of us being sisters and brother tribes here in North America, it's really important that we need to network with each other, reach out and help each other out, and keep each other informed, and remind each other that we're here. We can always speak with each other, chat with each other, whatnot. But yeah, that's all I gotta say about that. Hey Thomas, do you have any other final thoughts and words for our listeners out there?
Always respect Sasquatch and stay away from Bukwus, the little people. They're bad. Late
Going
for
and
work here, so I better run.
Oh, okay. All
Yeah.
right.
all right.
Hey, thank you for your time. We appreciate it,
Yes.
Thomas.
Thank you.
And don't forget,
Yep.
send me a link so I can post it on Sasquatch Island and numerous other groups.
Yes, sir. I'll definitely
Yeah.
send you this
And keep in touch.
copy.
Get me on again. I'll talk about Bukwus, little people, and whatever else you
Oh,
want.
yes,
Yeah.
All
sir.
right.
Thank you.
All right. Yep.
All right.
Okay.
Have a
I'll
good
talk to
day.
you guys later. I got to run.
All right.
All right. Later.
Go now. Guess.
Go net.
See ya.
Talk to you later.
Yeah. Thank you for joining us on another episode of Don't Whistle at Night podcast.